Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you're here. Today's video is going to be my May reading wrap-up. I'm very excited. I read a lot of good books this month. I do just want to say too, if you're ever curious about what I'm reading in real time, go ahead and check out my Goodreads. I do update on there quite often. So if you're ever curious on what I'm reading before you watch these videos at the end of the month or watch my like reading vlogs and stuff like that, or anything else where I'm talking about books, go ahead and check out my Goodreads. I feel like we should just get right on into it. We're gonna start with statistics because I've started doing this year in my reading wrap-ups. In the month of May, I read 10 books and 2 of them were 5-star. I'm very excited to talk about my 5 stars. I also have my swimsuit on under this because right after I film this video, I will be jumping in the pool because our apartment complex's pool just opened today. Literally so excited. Catch me reading so much more because I'm going to be reading at the pool this summer. Like I said, I read 10 books. So I read 6 romances, 2 fantasy, 1 mystery, and then I had 1 DNF, which was kind of like a dark fantasy or like a dark fantasy romance. As of the page count, I'm going to not include the DNF in the page count, even though I did get 65% of the way through the DNF. But I'd been reading it for so long, which we'll get into in a second, but I read it for so long that it just doesn't make sense to include it. I don't even know how to calculate how many pages I read of that. Maybe I'll do it like separately or something like that. And then I also had 1 reread this month. Let's go ahead and talk about my DNF first. My DNF was Manacled by Senling Yu. If you don't know what Manacle is, it's basically a Hermione fan fiction. Hermione is Draco and Hermione from the Harry Potter series, which I am a big Harry Potter girly. So I think it was like last October whenever my book club and I were reading our first book, actually. I started reading this and I started it on audio. And I haven't really read a lot of like dark-ish like fantasies or romances before. So I think whenever I first got into it, I was like, okay, I was a little scared. Yeah, I was a little scared to say the least. So I didn't really know what to think of it and I didn't want to like misjudge it or anything like that. And it's basically what would have happened if at the end of book 5 of Harry Potter, the bad guy in that book would have taken over and things just would have been completely different. It's basically what would have happened if like that happened, if the bad guys won per se. So I got, I think like 65 or 75% of the way through. I was actually listening to it on Spotify, but it's like a podcast. Okay. It's like a podcast, not an actual like audiobook on there, so you can listen however long you want. And I had been listening to it since October and I would listen to it here and there, and sometimes it would just be too dark for me, too much. And then towards the end it kind of like changes and it gets like a little bit lighter because there's so many flashbacks that you're going through. And I got to the flashbacks and I just realized that I just like didn't care. Straight up, I didn't really care. It was just so dark and like it felt so different than these characters up here. I don't know why I'm pointing up there. I guess my Harry Potter books are all the way on top of my shelf, but you can only see these 3. So just imagine that up there. It just felt not right. I did like some of it. I think that it was just too depressing and too much for me to read, especially like in the summertime. Like I just want a good like little cheesy romance and like a happy-go-lucky book. I don't want something that's like crazy dark. I don't know if I will ever return to that book. Let me know if you guys have read it or read the Harry Potter series, if you have any thoughts on the Hermione fanfics. Maybe I'll read one that's a little less dark. And it's also so incredibly long. I think it's longer than Kingdom of Ash. So yeah, I think that's actually my first DNF in my like adult book reading life. Which is actually kind of crazy to think about, but I'm not afraid to DNF anymore. So the first book that I actually finished in the month of May was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is a reread for me. I read it last year while I was doing a 24-hour readathon. I'm pretty sure I posted a video of it, so I'll leave it right here. I also read Fourth Wing in that vlog and I was like tandem reading this, and I was also like sick, and I feel like because I was reading Fourth Wing and it was just so much, especially because that was one of my first times really getting into fantasy, was reading that book. I literally did not remember anything about this book. I think I rated it like a 4 or something like that, which is still a really great rating. I just literally did not remember anything that happened, the characters, anything like that. So I decided to read this again, give it another go, because it gets a lot of hype and a lot of people love this book so much, and I really do love Ali Hazelwood's writing. This one specifically is about a theoretical physicist named Elsie, and she doesn't really get paid a lot doing her theoretical physicist-ness. Yeah, so she had side gigs. One of her side gigs is basically being a fake girlfriend to these guys on like this app. That's how she makes a lot of her extra money, so she can like live, which sucks. But one of her like guys that she normally goes to, he's like super nice and sweet. She does a lot of stuff with him, so like his family really isn't on him for not having a girlfriend. But then she meets his brother. She meets his brother at this like family function. His brother is very protective of him. His name is Greg. He's very protective of Greg. He's very protective. Oh my gosh, I can't say that. He's very protective of Grave and oh my gosh. He's very protective of Greg, and his name is Jack, and they meet and they just kind of have like a weird like interaction. And then the next day, Elsie goes to her interview for like a big job, like a really good big girl job where she's actually gonna get like paid well and she can do what she loves to do. And none other than Jack is there because she's doing like a job for MIT and he works there. He's a physicist and he's an experimental physicist, and normally theoretical physicists and experimental physicists kind of like butt heads and stuff like that, but he specifically wrote like an article a long time ago kind of like slandering theoretical physicists, and she figured out who he like really was. And then like there's this whole thing, and then like she has to figure out how to like not tell him and out Greg that like they're like fake dating, like stuff like that. It's a very interesting premise. The biggest thing that Elsie really suffers with in this book though is she does this thing where she becomes the Elsie that she thinks that person wants, whether that's a go-getter or for her to be like small and more timid or for her to be agreeable. And a lot of people say that this book really reminds them of Mirrorball by Taylor Swift because that is very Elsie. I don't know if I just didn't really feel a crazy connection to these characters. I was really hoping I was gonna like this so much more. I think I'm gonna rate this like a 4.25, and that's not a bad rating at all. Obviously that's still a 4. It's really high, but I think because whenever I read it last year I kind of like forgot what happened and then I reread it, I was really hoping for like a possible like 5-star just because I really do love Ali Hazelwood, but this just wasn't that for me. I don't know if it's just because I couldn't really relate to them as a couple or certain things that were happening in the book. I'm just not really sure, but 4.25 is still really good. I still really enjoyed it. I really like Elsie and Jack, and I really like how he was the one person who really wanted to see the real her and make the real her come out, and she was like the only, or not she, he was the only person for her that she couldn't really predict what Elsie she had to be for him, so she was just herself. And I really liked that, and I really liked everything about it. I don't know, I'm really disappointed because I just didn't feel as connected to these characters. I don't know why, because I felt like this could have been a really high rating for me, but a 4.25 is where I'm gonna stand. Okay, sorry if the angle looks a little bit different. I did have to change my battery, but the next 3 books that I read are all in my summer reading vlog that I uploaded this month. So if you want to see me reading these, reacting to these while I'm reading them, and getting very in-depth on my thoughts on them, go ahead and check that video out. I'm gonna start off with the first book that I read in that video, and this one was very disappointing, to say the least. I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, and I read the one that she came out with last year. Didn't really love it. Every Summer After is about a girl named Persephone, and she goes to this beach town every summer because her parents bought a house there for them to like vacation at, and her next door neighbors are these 2 boys. They're named Sam and Charlie. Sam is more her age, so her and him start to hang out and they really get along with each other, and this is in then and now timeline, so you get the now why they're reuniting, and then the then of them every single summer leading up to like what really happens in this book. The summer vibes are literally so good. They're so great. This made me want to go jump in a pool, which I'm going to be doing after this video. And I feel like that's all you really want from a summery book. It gave off great summer atmosphere and made me really excited for summer. So that was great about this book. And the first 50% was great, and I love Carly Fortune's writing, but this just this was such a miss for me because of the ending. It literally didn't make any sense to me why she chose to end it that way. It was so icky to me. Now, if you love this book, I'm not bashing you or saying that you have bad taste or anything like that. This just did not make sense to me and for me, and remember, books are all subjective. So if you love this book, nothing against you. And it's so hard to rate this because the first 50% I was so into it and I literally read it so fast, and then like the last 50% it just almost felt like a completely different book, and that's exactly how I felt with her Meet Me at the Lake. And I'm trying to decide if I want to read her new release because people are saying that they like it more, but I'm just still not really sure yet. If you've read her new release, let me know if I should give it a chance. I'm really conflicted on my rating though because I have such conflicting feelings. I think I'm gonna stick with a solid 3. I really did not like the end or what happened at the end like at all, but I really enjoyed the beginning. So I'm gonna stick with a 3 for this one. Then I read Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Springs series. This follows Cade and Willa and its dual POV. This is a grumpy sunshine trope. Basically, Cade Eaton is a grumpy little rancher cowboy man, and he's also a single dad. And his son, Luke Eaton, literally so freaking adorable. Like, not that I don't like kids in books. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually don't really mind it. But him in all of these books so far, literally so freaking adorable, and I love him so much. But he needs a nanny for the summer because he's really busy running the ranch. And so bring in Willa Grant, who needs a job, and she's friends with Summer from the first book, so she ends up getting the gig. So she's his nanny, and they're like living together, and it's like this whole thing, and they just have so much tension. This book is a little bit spicier, just to let you know, if you're wanting to get into this series, there is a little bit of spice. And a lot of times I am way more for tension than spice, but there was like a really good amount of tension in this book, to where the spice like really made me root for them and made me want them together. And also how romance books follow like a third act breakup and like stuff like that, this one made sense. Like, there was just so much about this book that I really enjoyed. I've said this about Elsie Silver before, but I feel like she just has the perfect recipe for a good romance. She has me rooting for the characters, she has me liking them both individually, she has them both having struggles, she has enough tension, she has enough romance in it, she has enough like spice, if you know what I mean, and she has enough of like the town itself and things going on and like other characters. It's just like, it's so good. Like, I would not be surprised if one of these books are going to be a 5-star. This one I think I'm gonna rate like a 4.5. I really enjoyed it, but it just wasn't a 5-star. But I do love my man Kate Eden. Eden. Oh my gosh, literally the worst day to film this video considering that I can't speak today, but I guess that's nothing new, so. And then the last book that was a part of that video was my first 5-star of the month, which was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is another dual POV romance, and it follows our characters Emma and Justin. Emma is a traveling nurse who has like a lot of trauma in her life of why she likes to pick up and go from place to place, and she travels with her friend Maddie everywhere. And Justin is basically a guy who posted on Reddit, and he explains that every time he dates a girl, after they break up, she finds the love of her life and they get married like soon after. And Emma ends up finding the Reddit thread, and she has the same thing happen to her, so they kind of like bond over that. And then they make a joke, they're like, what if we date so our like curses cancel out? And then they kind of do. So since she's a traveling nurse, she ends up going to where he lives, which is in Minnesota, and the story just kind of goes from there. So they're basically fake dating, but you know how that goes. There was so much in this book that I enjoyed. I will say that this is not your typical summery rom-com-y romance. There are elements of rom-cominess, but Abby Jimenez just never fails to give me the realness. There are some things in here that are a little bit outlandish, like them meeting on Reddit. You know, it does happen though, probably, in this age of the internet where everybody's chronically online, including myself. I just absolutely love how she writes. Justin himself is going through so much, so is Emma, but there's so much trauma in this book, and I don't want to say anything about it because I don't want it to give anything away, but it was just done so beautifully. And every time they go on a date, it is just so cute. It reminds me of like falling in love for the first time. You can tell that these characters have just truly never met someone they've really been in love with because they experienced so many things like that for the first time, and it was just so cute. And even though they're like grown adults, them experiencing that for the first time, I was just so happy for them. Like, they just are meant for each other, and I just love this story so much, and it was so good. And them being there for each other, and oh my god, Justin is literally the definition of if he wanted to he would, which I know so many people are saying, but he is acts of service king. I love him so much, and this book was just without a doubt 5 out of 5 star. I love this so much. If you have not read the first two in these interconnected standalone series, Part of Your World and Yours Truly, please read those first though, because the ending had me shook with the way she connected everything. It was so genius. This is a 5-star without a doubt. And then I decided to embark on a very big journey, which is the tandem read for Throne of Glass. So this is book 6 and 7 for me, depending on what order you're reading it in. We have Empire of Storms, and then we have Tower of Dawn. These are both very tabbed and very well loved, and I really can't say too much about the series. Basically all I can say is regarding the first book, because this series is truly, I feel like I've said this before about other series, but you get into it and it turns into something completely different, and you're following a completely different journey to where you really thought the story was going to go. But in this one, that but like on steroids a billion times. That's how many times you're turning around and the plot twists. Okay, but these follow an assassin named Selena Sardothian, and she basically gets chosen to be in a tournament to win to be the king's assassin, or the king's champion as they call it. And I'm just gonna leave it there because I don't want to spoil anything. I think this one was probably like a 4-star. There were a lot of parts in here that were slower, and I'm really glad that I did do the tandem read. This is a 5-star. Empire Storms, I literally love this book so much. There's so many good moments in here, so much action. All of my favorite characters were in this book, and this was kind of like a side quest book with like a different character, but it needed to happen for it to all come together in the end in Kingdom of Ash, so like I totally understand why. I highly recommend the tandem read. It's a little bit long. It took me a few weeks, and I was reading other books in between too, just as kind of like palate cleansers to keep me going and not slump me out, which I highly recommend doing. But once I got to a certain point, I could not stop, and I was just absolutely obsessed. I also ordered these tandem read bookmarks from Monarch Brittany. I'll leave them down below, but they made it super easy to follow the entire tandem read. This is the purple one for Empire of Storms. But I really, really loved it. It just has like what chapter to read, when, all of that kind of stuff on there. So highly recommend getting those. I'll leave those linked down below if you're interested, if you haven't done the tandem read yet, or if you want to reread and do the tandem read. But yeah, I love these books, and I literally ate them up, and I am so nervous but excited to finish the rest of the series. And then I read Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This is basically about a girl named Eve, and it's basically about a surprise pregnancy in your life, and it's just kind of following this character in her everyday life. It's not very plot driven. The tropes in here are very cutie though, and I really did enjoy it. It is one of my favorite tropes in here. I don't want to give it away because obviously it'll give away like who she ends up with and stuff like that. Other than that, there's not much I can say about the plot. It mainly is just genuinely following her and her pregnancy and that journey of her not really wanting a child, but then her coming to terms that like she did actually want a child. And not that she didn't want it. I feel like I'm not explaining this well at all. Okay. Not that she didn't want it. It was just so unexpected. But I don't know. It was just really interesting to go through her thoughts, especially as somebody who has never had a child. I found it very interesting. The romance in it was really, really cute and just very like, almost like pure. I'm trying to come up with the word for like first love feelings, but I just can't. The love in this book though, like the feeling of it kind of gave me the feeling of Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And I just thought it was very, very cute. Wholesome. That's the word I'm looking for. It was very, very wholesome, and I really, really did enjoy it. I just find it very interesting. It was just very cutie and fun. And then the mystery that I read this month was the last book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. What is going on outside? I found this on the web. Oh. Okay. There's so much going on right now. I'm sorry. These are YA mysteries, which are really the only ones I can handle. If we know, we know. I'm a scaredy cat. But I'm trying to get in my mystery era because I do enjoy them, and I'm starting to enjoy them the more that I read them. So if you have any recommendations, let me know down below because I'm trying to get into more. But these basically follow a girl named Pip, and she solves mysteries in her town. They're mainly like missing person cases, but this is the first time where the mystery like involves her. Like her life. It's really all about her. Obviously, I don't want to say too much, but it does involve like a serial killer, and I found it very thrilling for me because I am a scaredy cat, as we know. I did have to have a book before bed. I couldn't read this before bed, definitely, because that's terrifying, but the before bed book let me take my mind off of everything, which was nice. I'm very conflicted on my thoughts with this one specifically, just because there were a lot of things that I enjoyed, but there were a lot of things that really weren't my favorite. I think that the beginning dragged on. This is 450 pages for a mystery, and that just feels too long. I feel like the sweet spot is like around like 300-ish pages, give or take some pages, just because I want it to be fast-paced and I want there to be a lot going on. There was also a lot of internal dialogue, just Pip thinking and stuff like that, and I like it in books when there's a lot more banter and a lot more interaction with other characters. I feel like there was a lot less of that in this book, but everything that was going on was very interesting and intriguing, and there was definitely like one big twist that I was not expecting at all. I think the other ones, I guess, especially like just knowing our characters and stuff from reading 2 books about them, I just knew from who they were and stuff like that because I felt a connection to them, that they were going to do those certain things. And I feel like too in this one there was less like other elements. A lot of times in Holly Jackson's book she has like a lot of interviews and she has like photos of crime scenes and stuff like that, and it's just like very interesting the things that she adds, and it makes them very unique to her, and there was a lot less of that. And then there being more pages, it just kind of like dragged a little bit for me, which is a little disappointing, and the ending just was not my favorite, and I really thought this was going to be a 5-star too, which is so disappointing. I'm just very conflicted on my rating for this. I think it's like a 4 around there, maybe like a 3.75 to like a 4.5, 4.25. It's so hard because I enjoyed the rest of the series so much. This book was just interesting though, because this is not where I thought she was going to go with this, and I truly just don't know how I feel about it yet. So I'm gonna put it down. The last book that I read this month was Right on Cue by Fallon Ballard. I actually finished this morning, and like I said, this was my before bed book whenever I was reading As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson, so this one was a nice little palate cleanser before I went to bed. This is like an enemies to lovers contemporary romance rom-com-y book. This is about Emmy Harper, who is the basically like nepo baby of 2 very famous actors in Hollywood. I can't remember actually if they're actors. 2 very famous people in Hollywood. So she's been around Hollywood and like stardom and all that kind of stuff. The paparazzi have been following her like all her life. So this is nothing new to her, but basically she ends up being in this movie with this guy and they just do not get along at all. Like they do not like each other very much for a certain reason or another, which we'll get into that. And that was like the only time she really ever acted, and then she becomes a screenplay writer. So she kind of left acting in the past, and then we come to the future. This isn't a then and now or anything like that, but they do talk about the past a little bit. But we come to the future and one of her screenplays is getting made into a movie, and she's there for casting. They can't find the perfect person to play the main person that she wrote, and she ends up saying, you know what, I'll do it for one reason or another. And the guy they had casted as her love interest ends up, like, something ends up happening to him, and then they bring in the guy, his name is Grayson, from the first movie she ever acted in. So they have to act together again and be love interests again. Very interesting how it all kind of tied together. I read Just My Type by this author earlier this year. I absolutely loved it. It was a 4.5. It was so cute and fun and like just like perfect. I don't know if it was just because all of my favorite tropes in there, or at least a lot of my favorite tropes were in there, and just the plot was just so interesting. I really enjoyed that book the more that I think about it, especially after reading this one. This one I did not enjoy as much. This one is a lot spicier, but I feel like there wasn't enough tension for the spice to really like give me anything. It was just very like lusty, and I didn't really find myself enjoying that. I feel like the reason for them to be quote unquote enemies, sometimes I just don't enjoy enemies to lovers in romance books because it just feels super like almost like silly for a certain reason. I feel like it didn't get really resolved at all, like why they weren't really talking to each other or anything like that, or why they were super mad at each other. Just kind of like, oh poof, I'm totally fine with that now. Just kind of weird to me, and also just kind of like a friends with benefits situation, which I don't really enjoy a lot because it just does make it feel super lusty. And I feel like every time they were talking to each other, like everything that came out of their mouth, they were just talking about being attracted to each other or like each other's bodies or wanting to be close to one another, if you know what I'm saying. I feel like the times that they were connecting over like real things, I just didn't really like feel the want for them to be together or like the desire to root for them to be together until the end. The third act breakup was also kind of silly. I don't know, I just didn't really enjoy this one as much. I think I also read this during the summertime, and I guess it has like a winter backdrop, which there was nothing really said about that on the back. But if you do want to read this, I would recommend reading it in the winter time if you're interested. I think the acting thing was kind of interesting. I don't really know. I didn't really enjoy this book, sadly enough. I think I'm gonna give it like a 3, maybe? I don't really know. I did just finish it this morning, so I feel like I need to think on it. I'll put it up here, my final reading, because okay, I'm kind of thinking about it too now. I don't know. This just kind of felt like a completely different book than Just My Type that I read, and this is her most recent release, so I'm kind of like confused. I don't know if I just didn't connect to the main character or what, or if I read this like at the wrong time or something like that, but I don't know. But as of right now, I personally don't think I would recommend this book. If you have similar tastes to me, if you like all the things that I explained, read this, but in the winter time. But if you want to read a Fallon Ballard book, read Just My Type, because I really enjoyed that one. Okay, those are the 10 books that I read in the month of May. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you guys have any thoughts on those books, any books you want me to read, any videos you want me to do, anything like that, leave it in the comments down below. We can chat down there. Go ahead and leave a little tulip emoji in honor of my little jelly cat right here if you watch until the very end, so I know who the real ones are. And if you want to keep up with me on the daily, don't forget to follow my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Goodreads, especially my Goodreads, like I said at the beginning, if you want to keep up with what I'm reading in real time. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you guys are all just having a wonderful, amazing, magical, great, beautiful day. And I'm gonna go jump in the pool. Yeah, I love you. Have a wonderful, awesome day. Bye.